Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and in this video I am going to be painting some loose, misty roses with green and blue foliage. Now, I am starting this painting very differently than how I start really any of my other paintings. I've been doing a lot of flowers lately for my watercolor course, so I wanted to shake things up and just do things in a way that is unfamiliar to me. So up in that upper left corner, I have a photo of some roses where I have turned into shades of black and white with varying gray in between to break up values. So I am not getting concerned about all of the details of the folding petals or which leaf is in front of another leaf. No, they are just blocks of black, light gray, medium gray, and black. And I get to fill in the blanks however I see fit. So I have a piece of Arches cold press 140-pound cotton watercolor paper, and I've thoroughly wet both the front and the back, and I've done this so that any stroke I put down immediately diffuses. So I don't need to go and blend things away. Anything I put down is blending itself away. And again, I stress, this is not a way I usually paint. So for me, this was some play, some experimentation. And, you know, sometimes you really learn more about your pigments, about shapes, when approaching things in another manner. So the colors I have, I think all of the paints I'm using are by Rockwell Art. And I don't know all the exact color names. I just pulled out my palette and went, oh, that color's pretty. Oh, that color's pretty. Yeah, that one looks pretty. I think that one is, oof. You know what, I'm not even gonna guess. But what I've done is I used a pink color. So use whatever pink color you want. Or heck, as long as you get your values and shapes right, use whatever color you want. Make them blue roses if you want. Yellow, orange. You know what? Use brown. Because I'm going to pull out a brown later and it's got like red undertones and it works, and because I put it next to the pink, it doesn't really even look brown. So I'm going in, and the whole time I'm going to be using flat brushes. I will primarily be using a 3/4 inch flat brush by Mimic, and I picked it because it is nice and soft. I wanted a soft brush. And I picked a flat because one, I don't usually paint with a flat brush at all. And if you watched one of my previous videos where I did a Crocosmia flower using, one version was a flat brush, one version was a round brush, I have a preference for round brushes. You know what? If I'm going to be doing something different, let's go all the way whole hog. So flat brush. And I like using a flat brush sometimes because it's more like carving out shapes instead of trying to paint a shape. I don't know why just changing the brush type makes my brain approach it differently, but it does. So, you know, give it a try. Maybe this will let you approach something differently. Just grab a different brush than you're used to using. So I recently went in with a darker color. I think that one is, yeah, again, I'm just not even going to. I don't remember. And all of the tubes of paint are in a box under my desk, and I'm gonna have to do some rooting around for that. So the paper is still very wet. In fact, for this entire painting, the paper is wet, but it's slowly drying over time. So I've gone in, I'm trying to get a richer pigment pull where there's more pigment than water on the brush so I can get a darker value. And I'm still using that like pink color. And one thing I like about the Rockwell Art paints is that they are granulating, and many of them have multiple pigments, so as it goes on to a wet surface and begins to split, sometimes you get other shades and hues. Now, I did go into, and I know this one's actually called Lover's Tears, and it is a sparkly purple color. I just like to I wanted to introduce another color and put in a light value to give the rose more shape, really. Now, at this point, it's a lovely painting, but it's very cool in tone. So I'm going into one of my favorite greens, which is a warm green. And I'm doing something a little different. I know I keep saying that. This whole painting is different. So I am going in with this warm color, but in a very strong value, and I'm putting it on top of the cool color. Why am I doing that? Because. But I love how it's looking. It diffuses and merges with the cool, but it also pushes it away a little. And so it makes it look like this foliage is in the foreground more so than the blues that I have, and just makes it look like there's more going on in the background. And I know that I don't really show off my reference image, but it's just a bunch of shapes that are black. Like, all of the foliage is one value, and that value is black. So I am inventing things. I'm keeping the overall shape because, as you can see, there are bit blocks of white and black, and I'm just translating that to leave that the white of the paper and fill this with whatever color in whatever value I think looks good at the time. Now, I do have this paper on a flat surface, and I don't know if you can notice, but where the paint is diffusing on the rose is actually pushing upward, which, I mean, is kind of a cool effect, but it does mean that I do keep losing some of the shapes that I keep putting in. So oftentimes you will see me go in, put a dark color, wait a few minutes, that color has washed itself away because the paper is wet on the front and the back, and then I just go back in. And because it's bleeding and diffusing, some of those separate shapes I made are coming together. So I picked up a really stiff angled brush, and this brush is not great. It's all splayed. It's an Arteza number 5 angle brush, but another version of a flat brush. And I picked this because it's smaller, so I feel like I can do smaller shapes, more detail work. Though on this painting, detail work is being said generously. But because it's a synthetic brush, it doesn't hold a lot of water, and because it's a stiffer brush, when I rub it against my dry palette, because I usually work with tubes, but I do have these dry palettes for when I just cannot be bothered. And when trying to get a lot of pigment load from these dry, well, little paint pucks, I guess, having that stiffer bristle brush helps pick up more pigment. And that's what I want here, is I wanted to pick up more pigment so I could get a darker value. And I'm trying not to be too precious. I don't want to do so many details, and that is one of the reasons I like to notanize things or put things in those grayscales, is I can't see the details. I can just see big blocks of gray. And I have to figure it out. And as somebody who struggles with perfectionism, this is an excellent exercise for me to just let go. Let go, have fun with color, see what happens. This whole painting was done in just under 20 minutes. I did speed it up to 150% speed so that you're not seeing how slow I actually do take certain things. But whenever you wet the front and the back, honestly, I probably could have taken this a lot slower, and I probably should have let it sit for a few more minutes before I got started. Now here I'm gonna put in just the lightest bit of that green-blue color just to define that other edge of the rose. But I love lost and found edges, even if they are soft, so I wanted just enough to say, here's where the other side of the rose is, but that's it. I didn't want to outline the whole thing. I would lose the magic. And I love how misty this turns out, like a dream. Like I just woke up and I'm trying to remember what I saw, but it's quickly disappearing. You know that feeling? It's funny getting that kind of feeling from just a couple of roses. I'm going in with a really strong blue now because I wanted a deeper, darker value. Everything, I mean, it's watercolor, it dries paler. And I know that as it dries, it's going to get even paler. But that particular blue gets it's really saturated, so it's bright. And on one hand, I was a little bit like, that's really bright. But on the other hand, I went, well, there are plenty of bright colors, like quinacridone magenta, for instance, that when you put down, it's like really overwhelmingly bright, but then like tones down as it dries. And plus, even if it doesn't, let's leave it. I don't really mix my paints in this one. There is one point where I mix a little bit of my brown, which I think is called Landmark, with my pink, which if I remember now, it's called Peach Fairy. Now I'm going back and I'm scrubbing. I'm scrubbing with my angle synthetic brush to bring back some of that lighter value. And this is all watercolor. I am not going to go in with any wash on this. And this is all in one take. So I'm going in with Landmark now. That's the brown I have with some red undertones, and that allows it to work really well with the pink. But I need to get some of that rose darker. It is my focal point. It is the subject. So it needs to have the greatest range of value. As well as one way to really draw the eye somewhere is to have your lightest value touching your darkest value. And I want to be sparing with this super dark color, because if I start putting it everywhere, well, then I've lost my midtone. So putting in that deep dark value is important, but do it in a way that makes sense for your painting. And in this case, I just needed like a few little swooshes of it, and that's all. And there's the finished painting. So if you liked this video, press that like button so I know to make more like it. And if you want to see more from me, subscribe, because I post videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.